Gold or silver in today. FoxValleyCoins.com.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. I've been more skeptical than some, maybe even most, on the Republican side about the prospect that Joe Biden gets switched out for another candidate. And David Brooks, New York Times columnist, President Obama's favorite Republican, which is to say, not a Republican. David Brooks on PBS over the weekend saying that Democrats essentially should tamp down this who are we going to get to replace Biden rap, because we Democrats, I mean, he would say they, I would include him, we don't know what we got. We don't know how good we got it.
There's a lot of problems with Joe Biden running for re-election. His age, primarily. His approval ratings are low. But anytime you look at some alternative, whether it's the mystery moderate from the Midwest or Gavin Newsom or anybody else, things start unraveling really fast. And so the Democrats are lucky, frankly, to have a candidate in Biden who has presided over an incredibly strong economic recovery, who has presided over pretty good international peacemaking efforts, both in Asia this week and also in Europe, and who I believe whose numbers will go up as inflation recedes, as it is, and the strong job numbers are there. And they're extremely lucky to have a candidate, frankly, who's not a member of what you'd call the coastal elite. And Joe Biden sends off all the right cultural messages for moderate independent voters who don't have college degrees. And Democrats are not grateful enough for what they have, in my view.
Not thankful enough for what they have in the big guy, Mr. 10%. You know, and by the way, I think that is actually the posture that Republicans should be taking. We did the same thing in 2020. Joe Biden is senile. Joe Biden is hiding in his basement. Joe Biden can't be the nominee. Joe Biden can't win the election. Well, rather than lowering expectations, raise them. Joe Biden is a formidable figure. He won a campaign running from his basement. He's got an economy that's defying expectations because of all the funny money sloshing around. But regardless, in terms of how people view this, if inflation comes down a little bit more and I still got my job, then maybe I stay the course. It's a little bit more complicated. Joe Biden's numbers aren't great, but neither are Donald Trump's, particularly in suburban areas around urban centers in swing states. Rather than poor-mouthing Biden, you should be building him up, because don't you want him to be the nominee, Republicans? For more on this, pleased to be joined by Salena Zito, national political reporter and author of The Great Revolt Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. You can always check out her writings at selenazito.com. Salena, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
What about this? David Brooks, Democrats, we don't know how good we got it.
Well, one of the things that I believe, and obviously proved to be true, was that Donald Trump never particularly thought that Joe Biden was a formidable candidate against him. And he didn't have he always understood that Hillary would be, and he kind of respected that. But with Joe Biden, he has been insulted that he lost to Joe Biden.
And Sleepy Joe.
Right. And so what he did, which was a complete miscalculation, was, to your point, downplaying him and sort of ridiculing him. And while Joe Biden had plenty of things you could have run against in 2020, he didn't choose to do that. And I thought that was a foolish way to go after him. And he did the same thing in the 2022 midterms when he went out there for the candidates that he, made sure won primaries, which I don't think were very good candidates, in particular in Pennsylvania and Georgia and New Hampshire and in Arizona. And all he did was talk about Joe Biden, and it didn't work. And so when something doesn't work once, okay, maybe you try it again. But this is the third time, and there's plenty of ways to go after Biden, but he's not chosen to do any of them. And that's a problem for Republicans if he is the nominee, which, by the way, I'm still not convinced he's the nominee. I know I'm the only person in the country that thinks that, but.
You mean Biden?
No, I mean Trump.
Oh, you're not convinced that Trump isn't the nominee?
Even though the recent poll has him up 20 points?
Well, that's in Iowa. Before we get to Trump, what about Biden? Where are you on Biden? I mean, because I keep asking. We asked Brett Barrow this on Friday and stuff. Like, do you get a sense the scuttlebutt is starting to tamp down, that it's more likely than not Biden's going to be the nominee? And Brett Barrow's like, no, I think it's about the same as where it was a few weeks ago. So I think it's still a pretty dicey proposition. I don't know. I get the feeling that it isn't so much.
I'm not convinced either man is going to be the nominee for their party. I don't think anybody is inevitable. Now, that doesn't mean they don't end up being, but I do believe, to your point, though, that some of that has tamped down. But then you have an instance where he ignores what happened in Hawaii for a week. And people are then reminded, well, did he ever go to East Palestine? Well, no, he didn't. Did he ever apologize for what happened in Afghanistan? Well, no, he didn't. So not only does he have all of these other flaws, he does not have the empathy that people were sold that he possesses.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's something that I expect some Republicans should pick up on the debate on Wednesday night.
Yeah, and gas prices are crazy. I just drove across the country. When I left, they were, and between the time I left and the time I came back, they went up 40 cents a gallon. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but do we know why? I mean, I just it bewilders me. I mean, right now gas in the city is $5, and if you get premium, it's $6.
That's impossible for the average person to be able to sustain those kind of costs. Not even considering what's the impact is it going to have on our supply chain? What impact does it have on our farming, on our, truckers? This is all going to be passed down to all of us.
Now, you just mentioned about Trump. What are you hearing? Because I know you travel the country. What are you hearing from people about President Trump and his re-election campaign?
This election is very much in flux. And yes, he's leading right now. He's leading substantially. But voters are still, they're conflicted in they feel sort of a sense of obligation to him. They also feel a sense of defending him. But they also want something new. And so that's why I'm not convinced that he, and they're split equally on those sentiments. So, I'm not convinced at this moment that he's the nominee because of how voters feel.
You think it matters whether that he's skipping the debate on Wednesday night?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm of two minds on this. If I put my strategist hat on, which, by the way, I don't own one, but if I put my strategist hat on, I would tell him, absolutely don't go. It makes no sense. However, when I put my voter's hat on, and that's who I mostly report on, voters want they feel that they deserve to hear what he would do, how he would go forward. They want to know what's going on in terms of how he would handle a country, which is very different from when it was 4 years ago. And And if he doesn't voice that, and if he's unable to take attacks, that does not sit well with voters after a while. Maybe you skip the first one, but second, third, he said this weekend he's not going to do any.
He's not going to go to any GOP primary debates.
That's not fair to the voters.
Nope.
That is absolutely not fair to the voters. You can't spend your entire candidacy on social media posting without taking hits and taking questions and from voters, but also from your peers that are running against you.
Somebody who does have a strategist hat, but maybe he should have it removed, is Jeff Rowe, who is the chief strategist for DeSantis' super PAC. And he posted this memo online, and I understand, you post things online when you run a super PAC to signal to the campaign or to signal to supporters to do this or that. But posting this debate strategy memo with recommendations how DeSantis should deal on stage on Wednesday night, where he includes things like portraying Ramaswamy as a conservative in name only. He should defend Trump by saying the president is too weak to appear on stage with everyone, so leave him alone. He should pull out a personal anecdote about his family and show emotion. If DeSantis then does any of this, he looks like an automaton. And I mean, so DeSantis presented the best conservative reform record. I'm a huge Ron DeSantis fan, have been since he was elected. But I mean, this campaign is really underwhelming, to be generous. I mean, he is, to me, in Scott Walker territory right now.
Well, first of all, there's a reason why Jeff Rowe is running the super PAC and not the campaign.
Yeah, because there's more money to be made at the super PAC level.
There's more money, yeah, maybe, but maybe also Ron DeSantis didn't hire him.
Yeah, fair.
And
but he still wears the jacket for it, that's the problem.
I have very strong sentiments about Mr. Rowe, and I will keep all of them to myself.
That doesn't sound like they're strongly positive.
Y'all can draw your own conclusions.
Okay, all right.
However, I can name on one hand how many elections he's won. So.
But I mean, but the larger point about the DeSantis campaign, and this is again something else like with the ad that they did, a couple ads they've done, where DeSantis still has to respond to it. They still wear the jacket for it, and so you would think with this much runway and this much money, you would have the best team available, and it just doesn't seem like that's the case right now. And not to mention, like Ron and Casey notoriously keep their own counsel. So, they have to wear some of the responsibility for how this is proceeding as well, if you think it's proceeding badly, which I do.
Maybe. I don't know that it's proceeding badly.
Okay.
Because I've seen it where it counts. And where it counts is on the ground. And where it counts is on the ground in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina. And there is a very different story than what you see in the national news. And what you see in the national news is often fed to the people doing the news by Donald Trump. All of a sudden, he has gone from not talking to the national media to picking up the phone and saying, hey, did you see this? Did you see that? Look, Donald Trump went to Iowa, and he was there for less than an hour. That doesn't cut it with Iowa. And he brought a bunch of people from Florida. Well, why? Other than to troll Ron DeSantis, how do you earn a voter there? How do you win an argument about why your best way forward is? DeSantis and so is Tim Scott and is going out there and they're shaking hands and they're talking to people and they're going to low-key events that doesn't get the national press because it's not bombastic and it's not hair on fire and yet it's meaningful for the voters. There's about 120,000 people that will decide who wins the Iowa caucus on a cold January night. And it's going to be the people whose hands were shook, who someone made an argument to them why they would be best to serve the country as the president. And I don't think a flyover is ultimately how you win Iowa. He didn't win Iowa the last time, right, meaning Trump.
Do you think that this is Ron DeSantis is the only one who could depose Trump, who could stop Trump, or do you think like a Tim Scott or a Ramaswamy will potentially have a moment?
I think there is a potential at this moment that Ron DeSantis will win Iowa. Chris Christie will win New Hampshire or Vivek. And Tim Scott will win South Carolina. All of a sudden, everything changes. And Donald Trump hasn't shown up for one debate. All of a sudden, everything changes. So we are a year away from the RNC and DNC nominating conventions. I think we are going to see a lot of things in that year. And I don't think anybody is inevitable.
She is Salena Zito, national political reporter, author of The Great Revolt Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. And you can always get her writings at SalenaZito.com. Salena, thank you as always.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Are you turning 65 and thinking about Medicare? Or are you over 65 and haven't enrolled yet because you still have coverage at work? Either way, Medicare done correctly will be the best health insurance you will ever have. Imagine having nationwide access with an annual deductible of only $226. There are only two good things about aging, wisdom and Medicare. But to navigate